Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, everyone, for joining this important town hall. My name is Sixto Cancel, and I am the founder and CEO of Think of Us. I am joined today by Asia Schomburg, Associate Commissioner of the Children's Bureau in the Administration of Children and Family, Rebecca, the Executive Director of the National Foster Youth Institute, and Wisdom, National Director of the NAACP Youth and College Division. The purpose of today's town hall is to discuss the impending expiration of the moratorium on youth aging out of foster care. In December, thanks to thousands of advocates and people with lived experience who raised their voices, Congress passed the Supporting Youth and Families Through the Pandemic Act. That legislation placed a moratorium on youth aging out of care, and it allowed some young people who had recently aged out of care to temporarily re-enter. As a result, over the past 9 months, thousands of young people have been able to continue to receive services of foster care, which has allowed them to stay in their placements, receive financial support, have a social worker to go to when resources were needed during the pandemic. And data has shown that this has provided a stabilizing force for young people in terms of housing and preventing homelessness. This type of support has been instrumental in reconnecting young people to work and school. Currently, the moratorium on aging out is scheduled to expire in 10 days on September 30th. If states implemented the new law and youth were not aging out of care these past 9 months, we estimate approximately 18,000 young people are scheduled to age out on October 1st. So unless Congress takes additional action, we estimate that approximately 20,000 young people will abruptly age out of care on October 1st, and we're very concerned about what is the implication for youth. For context, every year, about 23,000 young people age out of foster care over the course of 12 months in America. For some, October 1st will be the beginning of a positive chapter. They'll be ready to meet the moment and prepared with the proper support. That moment will be a transition for them. I truly wish that this would be everyone's story, but we know that it's not, because some young people will age out without the necessary preparation and support. And from the qualitative and quantitative data that we have seen, we believe that the large majority of individuals are not prepared for a transition, and that our communities do not have the resources to provide all the supports. Even before the pandemic, too many foster youth were not adequately prepared for the challenges of aging out. All of the challenges facing older foster youth, including the struggles with mental health, finding employment, having adequate resources for housing, have become even more challenging during the pandemic. Now the struggles of aging out, which have intensified during the pandemic, are amplified by the fact that there's a year's worth of foster youth who have not aged out and will age out on the same day. Some youth may not even have noticed that they are aging out. With about 20,000 young people aging out on October 1st, we believe that many of these youth will experience housing insecurities, income loss, and other devastating consequences. While some youth will need intensive support based on the data that we've been able to pull together, we also know that some only need some bridge support. Just for one example, earlier this year, we had an opportunity to support a young parent who had reached out to us because she had needed roughly just $1,000. She had an apartment, was facing eviction, and before she called us, she had called 211, she called the churches, she applied for the housing vouchers, and none of these met her need in time. She did have a new job, and all she needed was to cover 1 month's worth of rent. She was able to connect with some of the resources that we provided internally, and as a result, she was able to get that 1 month worth of help. And today, almost a year later, she's living in her own apartment, making a decent salary, and is raising her daughter. For so many young people, it is a bridge support. It may be some more intense support. The bottom line is that while the picture looks different for every single young person, we know that as many of the 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds who are aging out will need some level of support. The best possible solution is for Congress to legislate the extension of this moratorium and provide those additional supports. I'm going to hand it over to Rebecca, who can provide you what's going on the Hill, what is the congressional update, and with that, I'm going to welcome Rebecca on.
Hi,
Thank
everyone.
you, Rebecca, for being here.
Hi, Sixto. Thank you so much for inviting me today. It's so nice to see everybody from around the country. I first want to thank everyone for joining us today. I want to think of us, the Congressional Caucus on Foster Care co-chairs, Congress members Danny Davis and Jackie Walorski, who sponsored the first bill back last year to extend Chafee. I want to thank all of our other community partners who have been in the trenches with us for the last year, really advocating to ensure that foster youth and child welfare has not been forgotten during this pandemic. And that includes Think of Us, the Child Welfare League of America, Youth Villages, the Youth Law Center. And most of all, I want to thank the young people and alumni and thousands of other advocates who have worked tirelessly during this pandemic to help support and change the laws that make sure that foster youth are not forgotten during this time. National Foster Youth Institute is an organization that believes that constituents of the Child Welfare Agency should be partners in developing the system itself, from federal to state to local. We work with members of Congress and different decision makers around the country to ensure that current and former foster youth are embedded when we're talking about programs, policies, legislation that is aimed to support foster youth and the families and child welfare. We've done over 30 town halls and briefings since March of 2020, and 7 of those town halls and briefings were specific to the issues of Chafee funding and the importance of increasing Chafee funding. We, along with other community partners, have brought up this issue with the White House, with ACF Secretary Chang in the past, and it's a pleasure to be back with Think of Us to talk more about the importance of Chafee funding to support foster youth. And FYI has sent a letter to the co-chairs of CCFY and the House leadership several months ago, urging them to take this issue into consideration. And as a result of this letter and our advocacy efforts, all 5 co-chairs responded with the introduction of this Chafee bill. There were over 243 signed petitions in our letter that included community partners, and most importantly, it included current and former foster youth voices from around the nation that came together and really made sure that your voice was heard and that the co-chairs really understood the importance of extending the Chafee bill. This bill will address all of the concerns that were addressed by the foster youth in our letter. The congressional chairs really took in what you all had to say and really made sure that all of those issues and problems were addressed by this extension bill. Last year, after Congress passed the Supporting Foster Youth and Families Through the Pandemic Act, which placed a moratorium on youth aging out of foster care, as Sixto had talked about, it had allowed some youth who had recently who would have aged out of care to temporarily re-enter foster care. But that is coming to an end. In addition, with the eviction moratorium being ruled unconstitutional, a lapse of Chafee funding would be detrimental to the tens of thousands of youth currently in extended foster care programs. Right now, I'm going to urge all of you to call your member of Congress and talk to them about how important Chafee funding is and how it has impacted you or people that you know, your siblings, right? Your friends that are currently in foster care. I also urge you to ask your member of Congress to join the Congressional Caucus on Foster Youth if they are not already a member, which will help ensure that your member of Congress has updated and real-time information about issues that impact you, and will also make sure that they are prioritizing child welfare in their work groups. And FYI works very closely with the Congressional Caucus on Foster Care to make sure that they have the information that comes directly from your voices to ensure that issues are being addressed appropriately. I'm going to turn it back over to Sixto. And again, thank you so much for having NFYI join you today.
Rebecca, I want to thank you for making the time and for all the hard work that you and other people with lived experience have been doing on the Hill. It's been a force of nature, so thank you. I also want to reiterate that the most viable solution in this very moment is Congress. In addition, governors can take action. In California, the legislation that was passed in California, there was legislation that was passed that will not have young people age out until December 30th. So governors can create moratoriums. They can issue executive orders at the state level. We saw a lot of this when the pandemic hit. Shout out to Foster Care Alumni of America in Illinois, who organized and made that happen. The Constitution gives Congress the power to make laws and the president and its federal agencies to carry out those laws. So to be clear, the Children's Bureau cannot create or extend a moratorium or add additional funds, but a bill has been introduced to Congress to extend the moratorium, as Rebecca explained. We are unsure whether that law will be passed in 10 days. The absence of that passage of that legislation could put a lot of young people at risk, but with your support and your mobilization, we believe that it can make a big difference. I want to hand it over now to the Associate Commissioner, who can share a little bit more from her perspective. I'm going to bring you up here, and sorry, Asia, you were on mute there.
That's okay.
And then if you want to put your speaker, cut the speaker on your computer, please. There we go.
How's that? I put my own headphones on.
Sorry, folks, having technical difficulties. Switch over to your mic.
How's that?
Say again.
How is that?
Perfect.
Okay, so we'll start again. I was saying thank you, Sixto, for allowing me to join you all today as we come together really to support foster youth impacted by the expiring moratorium on youth aging out. My name is Asia Schomburg. I'm the Associate Commissioner of the Children's Bureau. My role here today is really just to inspire action. I had to show up and let young people know, look, I hear you, I see you, and I'm standing with you. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of the states and to all of the child welfare staff who have prioritized the needs of young people so far, who have helped to get us through this pandemic and to this point right now. Within days of joining the Children's Bureau in March, I directed the Children's Bureau to release guidance to the states around pandemic flexibilities. That's the Supporting Foster Youth and Families Through the Pandemic Act. I call it the Pandemic Flexibilities Bill. We heard from our partners across the country with questions about the law and how to get funds into the hands of young people. We held trainings, we answered your questions, and we launched a webpage with additional resources. And similarly, in this situation, we want to work hand in hand with the jurisdictions. So this is an opportunity for us all to come together as a nation to up-level support for youth transitioning from foster care. This has been an issue that I have grappled with my entire career in child welfare, helping youth to transition successfully out of foster care. We have to trust young people to know what they want and what they need. I think in many ways, it feels like we're coming out of this pandemic, we're getting vaccinated, and it's helping many of us to feel safer. But we know that we're still in the midst of fighting this virus, and we're still suffering the economic consequences. Now, we expect that on September 30th, nothing will change for most young people. And we hope that states are putting a bridge into place for those who it might affect. So what do we mean by bridge? We're working with states to identify federal resources and opportunities to create a bridge for young people who feel they need additional time in the foster care setting they're in. So for youth older than age 21, we will work with states who are eligible to opt in to using Chafee funds to support youth up until the age of 23. And we already know that 23 states have been approved for this option. For youth who are under age 21, there are emergency provisions that states can exercise under the Stafford Act, which would allow states to continue receiving federal funds. I want you to reach out to your Children's Bureau regional office staff to think through all of the solutions. So we want states to examine all the sources of funding, including those allocated under the American Rescue Plan. Let's leave no stone unturned, people. Connect to stimulus payments, child tax credits, housing vouchers. We have to be creative. Of course, always partner with young people. They have the answers. Again, reaching out to your regional office staff. And remember that a successful transition means planning ahead. So even in California, where they are modeling best practice, they've changed their own rules around the moratorium on aging out. We still have to make sure that we are planning with young people about how best to age out and what a successful transition looks like for them. And we want to make absolutely sure that young people have what they need, not only on October 1st, but beyond. So with that, I just want to say, again, thank you for allowing me, Sixto, to participate. And I look forward to partnering with you in whatever way that we can to make it a successful transition period.
I want to say thank you, Commissioner, and thanks so much to you and the administration for your solidarity and support. While we remain hopeful about a legislative solution, I believe the right thing to do in this moment is also to prepare for the possibility that Congress doesn't get it done. And even if legislation does pass, we still must have a plan B. There will come a day when the moratorium ends, whether it's October 1st, 3 months from now, or a whole year from now. Plan B is preparing for when that day comes, the day when many thousands of young people will age out on the same day, the day that will represent the single largest influx of youth aging out of care on the same day. It will be either October 1st or months down the line. The child welfare community can prepare and mobilize to meet those needs of young people. For those of us who've been working, for those of you who work in the foster care ecosystem, whether it be public or nonprofit sector, we're asking that you take action today to begin to prepare your community for the day when the moratorium is lifted. When the moratorium is lifted, most communities in America, except for major metro areas, cities basically, like Chicago, Miami, Los Angeles, we will likely see smaller numbers that around like 50 or 100 young people who will be aging out on that same day. I believe this is tangible. I believe it's manageable for us to be able to wrap around as a community to be able to support young people based on what they might need. What we're trying to do here is inspire communities to take action to help young people meet their basic needs, prevent huge gaps of support, and ensure that there are opportunities like jobs that young people can engage in to reach self-sufficiency. These are the needs. So we've heard some needs from multiple studies from our data about what are some of the very practical stuff. So I want to give you 9 categories, and it's just some ideas. This is not a checklist. This is not the know-how, but they're invitations. And so we're asking that you get creative on your end. And so here we are. Topic number 1 is job. Explore creating a partnership with businesses in your area and ask them to commit to hiring foster youth. Contact your local chamber of commerce to educate them about the expiring moratorium and that foster youth in your community will be needing jobs. Ask them to inform their business members about the issue. Make an announcement at community meetings in your local churches and other religious institutions that foster youth are looking for jobs. Number 2, support maintaining jobs. Help getting work shoes and work uniforms are so essential in this moment. Organizing ride shares or carpooling, even just 1 or 2 young people as they go to interviews or their first 2 weeks of work as they wait for their first paycheck. Set aside funds to help young people get shoes for work. We hear shoes being such a tangible, concrete need. Partner with local and regional businesses to provide gift cards to purchase clothing and uniforms and shoes for work. Activate supports for getting youth access to basic hygiene items, deodorant, shampoo, laundry detergent, things that we can go ahead and donate and take off of their bill for that month as they get up and running. The third area is food, meals and cookware. Some young people experience a lot of food insecurities, and some young people only experience a few short gaps in coverage of food based on the data that we've been able to collect. So we want you to raise awareness about apps that connect young people to surplus food in their neighborhood, like Oli or Order Ahead, which allows you to do online shopping at a food bank. Get your organizations to organize grocery drives to get groceries to young people. Prepare food baskets for young people aging out. Ask local restaurants to organize a foster youth night to have discounts for eating out that night. Issue number 4, topic area number 4. Help find young people a place, help with deposits, being able to host office hours to help young people search and select the list of apartments to view. Host a number of good drives to access basic home furnishings like cookware and kitchenware. I cannot tell you how many young people during the pandemic have actually reached out about getting the proper pots and proper kitchenware. Raise a small fund dedicated to covering the deposits. So many of the vouchers that exist right now, these housing vouchers, do not cover deposits for apartments. Area number 5, transportation support. Work with nonprofits to purchase bus passes for foster youth who may need them. Build partnership with your local auto repair companies and dealerships to provide services like free oil changes or free checkups on a car. Area number 6 is around childcare supplies for babies and toddlers. Educate nonprofits in your area that serve young children about the issues that young people in foster care are going through, and then prepare them for what might be a bit of a surge in the community. Direct youth to those local nonprofits that serve younger kids. Issue number 7, money management. Support creating a budget, tips for survival in financial management. Host office hours to talk to young people about how to navigate survival financial decisions. Ask financial planners to donate some of their times and to walk young people through. This was one of the top requests that we've seen in our data over the pandemic. Issue number 8, help applying for services. So many young people in our data literally requested support to be able to sit side by side with someone and do a housing application, an unemployment application, a food stamp application. Your time can be catalytic. And so setting up, whether it's an official office hour or you're just reaching out to someone, these are things that you can do. The last one here, area topic number 9, is direct financial assistance. Work with your communities and networks to commit to raising around $10,000 just to provide gap financial coverage for foster youth in those counties where you may not have a lot of young people aging out. You can literally raise funds to support with those emergent needs. Tap into existing mutual aid groups in your area that are providing direct cash relief. I cannot tell you how many folks are organizing to give money away. And so because it doesn't say current or former foster youth, we sometimes miss that opportunity. Create funds to help young people pay for co-pays around mental and physical health appointments. We heard this loud and clear in our data and the requests that we are getting. So these are things that people at the local level can do. These are very specific, practical things. This is not a checklist, but an invitation on how we should be thinking about how we can activate folks on the local level. As a follow-up to this town hall, we're going to be sending out emails with specific action steps. Things like calling your Congress member, things like being able to mobilize resources in your community, these ideas. And most importantly, as we go through this, I think this is one moment where we can truly engage folks outside of child welfare. There are people who care, and there are people, if you ask a question, they will show up. So I want to take a moment here to introduce one of my colleagues here, Wisdom Cole, National Director of the NAACP Youth and College Division. And in his role, he serves more than 700 youth councils, high school chapters, college chapters, and really activate them to be able to go ahead and fight the good fight. So Wisdom, would love to just give you a few moments before we hit our conclusion here.
Thank you, Sixto. I appreciate you having me here. It's an honor and a pleasure. Again, my name is Wisdom Cole, and I'm the National Director for the NAACP Youth and College Division. I work with young people across the country doing advocacy work, ensuring that they are able to create campaigns, build political agendas, and win and train and mobilize. When Sixto came to me and talked to me about this campaign and working together, I wanted to jump at this opportunity right away because we need to recognize that in this current society, right, we care about youth aging out. We recognize that 50% of Black families experience a child abuse investigation. When youth are taken in, about 50% will be reunited back with homes. So disproportionately, Black youth will age out. Recognizing that this is a Black issue. Working at a Black organization is essential that we address this. It's essential that we make sure that youth are safe. You know, we want to make sure that youth have excellent opportunities and access to all the supports necessary. And so at the NAACP, we want to make sure that we are partnering and working hand in hand in the critical states and connecting with units, branches, youth councils, college chapters, folks who are doing this work every single day and making sure that they are advocating for the right bill. We want to make sure we're supporting. We want to engage with Sixto. We want to engage with Think of Us. Again, I want to thank you for inviting me to be here, but we also want to make sure that we are passing legislation that will actually affect change. And so if this bill doesn't pass, we want to be ready to activate our chapters to give wraparound services for young people who are aging out. And so our 2 million members who are working every single day, who are business owners, who oftentimes are people in the community that are very rooted, right? When I think about the NAACP, we're talking about a legacy organization where people have been consistently working to uphold democracy, but also making sure that we are keeping people accountable. And so with the members that we do have on the ground, we want to be able to actually connect in terms of mentorship, coaching youth, making a difference around local levels, and making sure that we are making the most of this partnership with Think of Us. And so I'm super excited to continue this work together, excited to hear more, excited to make sure that we are offering the right supports, but also making sure that we're giving people the right information. And so thank you, Sixto, so much for having me here today. I'm excited to continue partnering and working, and thank you for leading the charge on this work.
Wisdom, I want to be able to say, one, on behalf of current and former foster youth, thank you. So many times we are looking for support outside of the child welfare system, and to be able to activate the 2 million members, not only just in the advocacy efforts, but if the government is not able to meet the demand, right, meet the moment, that it is always good neighbors. It's always a community after every disaster that steps up and that really provides impact. And so this is a moment where I feel good about us as a whole entire ecosystem and our allies like you to be able to step in. And so just a deep thank you, and looking forward to what comes next here. So I want to just talk to you for a quick second that throughout this pandemic, I've seen the national foster care community move. We saw in the beginning days of the pandemic that current and former foster youth literally put together food drives and put together baskets, even when some folks didn't have a lot, to be able to make a difference for folks who were going through it. And so today we find ourselves in just another very important moment. It will take all of us working together to really ensure not one organization, not one association is going to be able to actually meet this challenge by itself. And so we're going to have to team up with folks. And what I'm asking folks to do is team up with folks that you've never teamed up with before to really meet this moment. At the local level, it may be a big number at the national level, but at the hyper local level, this is tangible. We can make a difference. There are a few places that are going to have a lot more young people aging out, and we will have to do some work there too. But for 90% of the country, we can solve this at the very much of the community level. I want to ask all young people to get involved. I want you to know that we see you, we hear you, and the needs are, and to communicate your needs fully. You are resilient, you are strong, and you're going to be able to make it through this. So many of us have traveled this walk, and with the right proper supports, whether that be for the community, government intervention, we know that this is a moment that we all can make a difference. I want to thank everyone who tuned in today. Please feel free to share with us some of the actions that you're taking. We're going to go ahead and do our best to start engaging people outside of the child welfare ecosystem to take action. And with that, I want to say a quick shout out to Max at Rise Free. They do a lot of work around student debt, who also have pledged some support to us to go ahead and activate on the Hill and so forth. I'm very, very, very excited for and what I should say is I'm very, very inspired by how people have been able to mobilize in these shortcoming days to ensure that young people get what they need. And it's going to be up to all of us to actually do the work. So with that being said, we want to say a sincere thank you. We will follow up with more information.